People are starting to realize the Sunday ticket trial, the massive antitrust action that's been in the court system for 9 years. Trial started on June 5. They're realizing it's a big deal. McAfee saw the article today about both Roger Goodell and Jerry Jones testifying this week. Goodell likely today, Jones possibly today. I doubt it's going to be today. I'll talk about that in a second. That got his attention. And that's one of the things that's been frustrating to me about this case. It's hard to find any accounts of what's going on in the courtroom because it's not being covered like other big trials are covered. And I've got a Google alert set. I get on Google and I search every day, multiple times a day. Is there some new story? Is there some account of documents or evidence or arguments or testimony that would help me better understand it so I can explain to you what's happening? So I'll be talking to him about that in about 35 minutes. That gives me 35 minutes to get through everything I want to talk about today. And I'm going to start with this Sunday ticket trial because it is a big deal for Roger Goodell and Jerry Jones to be testifying. I believe they're testifying in the defendant's case in chief. Every once in a while, aggressive lawyers will actually call one of the key witnesses from the other side as part of their case in chief. That's risky. That's risky because you're basically putting a hostile witness on the stand. But sometimes you need that in order to prove all the elements of your case. In this case, based upon what I saw last week, the defense is now in its case in chief. It's calling witnesses and it's putting on Roger Goodell and Jerry Jones. And we'll see how they do. How they do on direct versus how they do on cross is two different things. And I read earlier this year the 400-page transcript of the deposition that Roger Goodell gave in the case that's still pending on the question of whether or not the NFL will be able to get insurance coverage for the massive class action concussion settlement from more than 10 years ago, but it finally was approved and went into effect probably 7 or 8 years ago. They want to get insurance money to pay for what they spent on this big fund that is used for former players who have any type of cognitive issue. There's certain formulas and procedures you get paid based upon what condition you have, how long you played, et cetera, et cetera. They want to send the bill for all of that to the insurance providers. And Goodell in July of 2022 was questioned at length in a deposition. Now, when you're in a deposition, there's greater freedom to be an asshole if you're inclined to do that because there's no judge. I know if you saw the Office episode where Michael Scott's being deposed in Jan's lawsuit against Dunder Mifflin, there's a judge in the room. There's no judge in the room at a deposition. It's the lawyers, it's a court reporter, and that's it. Now, if there's an issue that comes up, you can call the judge. If there's an argument over what's proper and what's not proper, that's a bold move if you make. If you bother the judge with a question from a deposition in one of his or her pending cases, you could piss the judge off. But it's just the lawyers. And a lot of times what happens when you've got somebody who is powerful, who is rich, who is used to having everyone around that person cater to them and do what they want and submit to their authority, those people don't like to submit to anyone else's authority. And when you get into a deposition setting and there's a lawyer who is asking a bunch of tough pointed questions and not letting you off the hook, and it's not like a press conference where somebody asks you a question, you really didn't want to answer it, word salad, somebody else asks a completely different question, whew, crisis averted. When you're in a deposition setting, if you try word salad in response to a tough question, you know what happens? They ask the question again. And if you go word salad, they ask it again. And the various ingredients of the word salads become fodder for follow-up questions. So it can get very tense. It can get awkward. And I know from reading the 400-page deposition transcript from a couple of years ago with Goodell in that insurance coverage case, I could tell he was pissed a few times. And it's one thing to do it in that setting. It's another thing to do it on the witness stand, open court, judge there, jury there. So we'll see whether or not he can submit as needed to the authority of the court and how he'll handle the lawyer. Now, we won't see it because obviously it's not on TV. We'll see what the news accounts are. I don't know if transcripts are available on a regular basis. I haven't seen any, but I, just as recovering lawyer, 15 years removed from when I last really practiced, I'd love to see. And, if I had the time, Peter King texted over the weekend, hey, you should really have somebody in the room every day for this trial. And it's like, yeah, that's easier said than done for a variety of reasons, because our business in large part relies on quantity, and our writers are constantly looking for new stories. And I don't know how much our readers care about this case, although I think they care about it more than most legal cases. And they definitely care about the fact that no one else is talking about it, writing about it, trying to explain what it's all about. And at the core, it's as simple as this. The NFL is not one business. The NFL is 32 distinct businesses. Therefore, the NFL is subject to the requirements of the antitrust laws. Now, there are different types, and I was never an antitrust law expert, but you can't come together as distinct businesses and set prices or determine the labor market or just otherwise do things that don't reflect competition among 32 distinct businesses. And there was a case in 2010 from the US Supreme Court, the American Needle case, that was critical to what was looming in the NFL. The lockout was coming, and the NFLPA's first order of business when the league locks them out is to, and there's a technical term for it, disclaim interest, I think is the word, or words, they shut down the union. And when you shut down the union, that takes away the antitrust exemption that applies to a multi-employer bargaining unit. And I know that's a big legal sounding word, but basically what it means is the union encompasses all 32 teams. And all 32 teams come together for one bargaining unit, the NFL players. That gives the league the ability at the bargaining table to negotiate salary caps, minimum salaries, free agency, the draft, everything that would be an antitrust violation if these were 32 different businesses who weren't one business and were subject to the antitrust laws. So the NFL, in some circumstances, has the exemption, like when dealing with the union. Under the broadcast antitrust exemption, they can sell the big packages to the various networks. The limits of that are being tested by this case, because the argument is that the premium product that the NFL has created, Sunday Ticket, and the NFL's alleged, if not actual, practice of forcing the Sunday Ticket provider to charge so much that a certain percentage of people who would otherwise get Sunday Ticket just watch what's on Fox or CBS in their local markets. That's where the antitrust violation fundamentally and primarily comes from. That the NFL is fixing prices in violation of the antitrust law, holding Sunday Ticket at a number that scares people away so they'll watch the Sunday afternoon games that are available to them, far less freedom of choice in that setting. That's really what it's about. And I think subsumed within that is this idea of, why can't we just get Sunday Ticket one team at a time? Why can't we get one weekend at a time? Why can't we get one game at a time? Why do we have to buy the whole thing? So that's what the case is all about. And that's why I've been saying, number one, if the NFL loses, there could be a huge, gigantic verdict against the NFL. Big judgment, especially because antitrust cases, damages get trebled. Also, it could force the NFL to say, hey, how do we prevent the next antitrust case? That's what college football and other NCAA sports are currently doing, because they've been losing antitrust cases about rules that they, as a bunch of different businesses operating under the auspices of the NCAA, have broken the law with NIL, with this, with that. So how do you prevent it in the future? The fact that they allowed NIL to happen 3 years ago was a recognition of the fact that we're going to get sued into oblivion if we don't. So what will the NFL do based upon this verdict to change its business practices so it doesn't get another antitrust law and another, and it just keeps going indefinitely? Now, the silver bullet for the NFL, I mentioned this on Pardon My Take, and the goal here is not to be political. The goal is to be pragmatic. The NFL will, I believe, appeal this thing all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And given the way the U.S. Supreme Court is currently constituted, 6-3 conservative majority, conservative judges tend to be pro-business. That's the way it goes. That's the way it is. When I practiced law, there were certain judges that if you were representing an employer who was being sued, it was good for you. There were certain judges, it's bad for you. Judges, it's good for you if you've got the individual. It's not good if you're trying to represent the individual against a big company. That's a huge part of how these cases get resolved. And I think the NFL is confident that as the court is currently put together, they'll win ultimately on the arguments that they previously made. Because what happened was when they filed the suit, the judge in California presiding over the case threw it out, granted the NFL's motion to dismiss. But the appeals court, Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, reinstated it. That's one of the reasons why it's taken 9 years to get here. So if the NFL would lose, and if it would be whatever verdict, I'm sure the NFL will appeal anything that goes adverse to it in this all the way to the Supreme Court because it wants to be able to keep doing business the way it's been doing business. I think that's where it's going to go. So it's been around for 9 years, maybe to be around for 9 more years. Bottom line, though, is for now, it's in court, it's happening. Goodell and Jones, and let's see what kind of coaching they've gotten from their lawyers, and let's see whether or not they listen. You know, Jerry, and I made this point earlier, he's that guy that thinks he can sweet talk his way out of any jam, throw in a wink or two from time to time, and word salad, they'll move on to the next topic. Good lawyers will let the witness ramble for as long as the witness wants to and take notes for where follow-up questions may come from that meandering answer, and then get back to the question that wasn't answered because the word salad was what was served up instead of the answer to what often is a very simple question. And that's the art of cross-examination. You want to craft your questions so they are closed-ended, yes or no, undeniable. They can either agree with me or they're going to eventually look like they're not telling the truth, or they're so concerned with winning the case that they've allowed that to get in the way of just basic logic and common sense. All right, so that's where we are on that. We'll have more updates at PFT, and we'll see who testifies today. I suspect at most it'll be Goodell. I doubt, because they had an economic expert who was in the middle of cross-examination that needed to go back on the witness stand, and they're probably just getting started out there. It's 11:47 a.m. Eastern as I speak. I think if they get through Goodell today, that'll be a win. And if I'm the lawyer for the plaintiffs who's going to be cross-examining Goodell, I want to be able to work tonight on coming up with more cross questions based upon what he says on direct. It's always good to have that overnight period to think of things that you otherwise aren't coming up with on the fly. They'll come to it with a plan of questions they want to ask him, but then that plan is going to get revised based upon what he actually testifies to. And if you have more time to just refine it, to brainstorm, to really package something that's going to be the most impactful that it can to the jury, that's the way to go. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.